Hi everyone and welcome. This is Eagle News. I am Rose Papa Angeles in Washington. It's Saturday, November 18, 2023 here in the nation's capital. The week's recap begins with President Joe Biden signing the Stopgap bill averting a government shutdown. On Thursday, Biden signed the short-term funding bill known as Continuing Resolution. It cleared the House Tuesday and was passed by the Senate Wednesday night. Had the bill not passed, the government funding would have run out Friday. The feared shutdown would have sent home 1.5 million public workers without pay. Most federal facilities, including national parks, would have to close. Air traffic control system could be severely impacted. All this as the U.S. prepares for the busiest travel season in the country. U.S. President Joe Biden and China's Xi Jinping have held their first face-to-face meeting in more than a year, and it appears the two have made real progress in mending fences between the two superpowers. ThomasILikness reports.
At a meeting during the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in San Francisco, Biden says he and Xi have agreed to keep the lines of communication open.
He and I agreed that each one of us could pick up the phone, call directly, and would be heard immediately.
During the 4-hour meeting, the two agreed to restore military-to-military communications in a bid to ease soaring tensions. China also agreed to tackle the production of ingredients for the drug fentanyl. And the two countries have planned talks on artificial intelligence. Biden says they have to ensure that competition between the two nations does not veer into conflict. And for his part, Xi says planet Earth is big enough for the two countries to succeed. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Washington and Beijing remain far apart on the issue of Taiwan. Xi told Biden to stop arming the island, adding that reunification is unstoppable. Beijing has not ruled out seizing the island by force. Later, at a news conference, Biden says he still thinks Xi is a dictator, a remark he made earlier this year that sparked fury from Beijing.
Well, look, he is. I mean, he's a dictator in the sense that he is a guy who runs a country that is a communist country that is based on a form of government totally different than ours.
Xi's visit sparked several protests throughout the week, with demonstrators saying the world should know about the atrocities he has committed. Waving banners and chanting slogans, they say China is not to be trusted. Outside the venue where he met with Biden, demonstrators burned a Chinese flag. But at the entrance to the estate, fans of Xi gathered to show their support for the Chinese leader. Following Wednesday's meeting, it appears the frosty relations between the U.S. and China have begun to thaw. Now, this is how the meeting ended. The leaders of the two superpowers went for a walk in the garden of the historic estate where they held talks. And even better, the two have agreed to continue talks in the future. One other sign of closer relations? Panda diplomacy. At a business dinner later that evening, Xi announced that China is ready to continue with its cooperation with the U.S. on panda conservation. ThomasILikness, Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
For the first time in its 234-year history, America's highest court will now be governed by a code of conduct. This after reports of Supreme Court judges accepting lavish gifts and luxury vacations. Our Washington correspondent Rosel Feria reports.
The U.S. Supreme Court will now abide by an official ethics code. Before this, Supreme Court justices were the only federal judges not subject to ethical oversight. The adoption of the code comes months after nonprofit media outlet ProPublica published a report. In it, it said that Justice Clarence Thomas accepted years of luxury travels and gifts from a billionaire Republican. Among the gifts were the purchase of a home for his mom and school tuition for a relative. Justice Samuel Alito was reported to have accepted a private jet trip to Alaska. The trip was reportedly paid for by a hedge fund billionaire. That billionaire later had a case before Alito's court wherein Alito did not recuse himself. Both Thomas and Alito have denied any impropriety. All 9 justices signed the 9-page Code of Conduct. In a statement, it says it is doing so to dispel the misunderstanding that justices regard themselves as unrestricted by any ethics rules. The ethics code requires them to uphold the integrity and independence of the judiciary. It also prohibits the justices from soliciting gifts, judging cases where their impartiality might be reasonably questioned, and speaking at events sponsored or associated with a political party. Rosel Feria, Washington, D.C., Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
In Canada, the average asking rent is surging, and in just the past half year, it has increased by $175 per month for a one-bedroom space. Ashley Sakmar has that story.
Rent prices continue to increase here in Canada as new reports show that the average asking rental price has reached $2,178 last month, showing an almost 10% annual increase. So far this month of November, average rent prices for a one-bedroom apartment, condo, and/or townhouse averaged to about $1,900 across the country. According to the report, this average asking price is increased by $175 every month in the last 6 months. The top 3 provinces with the highest asking rent prices are the following: Vancouver with about $2,800 rent for a one-bedroom residence per month. Second is Burnaby with about $2,700 per month. Toronto comes third with $2,600 per month. Oakville, Mississauga, Richmond Hill, Markham, and Etobicoke follow Toronto, with asking rent prices ranging from $2,200 to $2,300 for a one-bedroom residence. For two-bedroom residences, the rent prices are almost $1,000 higher in the aforementioned cities. This ongoing rent increases is largely because of price increases in Alberta, Quebec, and Nova Scotia. These provinces have had a strong infusion of population growth and new rental supply priced at above average markets. In Calgary, asking rent prices increased by 14%, followed by Montreal. With rental prices steadily rising across the country, it is another financial hardship and challenge for Canadians struggle with higher costs of living and inflation. Ashley Sakmar, Toronto, Ontario, Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
Now, back here in the United States, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says that 98 million Americans have pre-diabetes. 81% of that 98 million do not know that they have it. Now, what can be done about it? Philip Toledo on Health is Wealth.
You heard that right, 98 million. That's more than 1 in 3 here in the US that has pre-diabetes. CDC warns that pre-diabetes is a serious health condition. It also puts people at risk of other serious conditions. These include heart attack, stroke, and type 2 diabetes. On the bright side, research shows the diagnosis of pre-diabetes can inspire individuals to embrace lifestyle changes, from eating healthier to managing weight and being active. Such lifestyle changes can help delay or even prevent the onset of type 2 diabetes. In connection with the World Diabetes Day, CDC and the Ad Council are launching a new national public service announcements. These are part of the Do I Have Pre-Diabetes initiative. The campaign encourages risk awareness and healthy lifestyle changes to help reverse pre-diabetes. The PSAs will appear nationwide across broadcast, print, radio, out-of-home, digital banners, and social media. They will be in English and Spanish. To assess your own risk or learn more, visit doihaveprediabetes.org. Philip Toledo in Atlanta, Georgia, Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
The World Health Organization and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention report that global measles cases in the past year increased, taking the number to 9 million. That's also increased to 136,000, mostly children. Bernadette Ragini has the details.
In a report released by WHO and CDC, in 2022, 33 million children around the world missed a measles dose. 22 million missed their first dose. Half of this number live in just 10 countries, several of which are low-income nations. Another 11 million missed their second dose. With measles, 2 doses are necessary to protect communities from outbreaks. CDC's Global Immunization Division warns that measles cases anywhere pose a risk to all countries and communities where people are under-vaccinated. Urgent, targeted efforts are critical to prevent measles disease and deaths. CDC and WHO urge countries to find and vaccinate all children against measles and other vaccine-preventable diseases. Bernadette Regini, Virginia Beach, Virginia. Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is expanding its testing of international air traveler samples. This to include flu, respiratory, syncytial virus, and other respiratory viruses. Rosal Ferreira tells us more.
CDC is conducting a new pilot on samples it is collecting as part of its Traveler-Based Genomic Surveillance or TGS program. This will provide early detection of flu, RSV, and select other respiratory viruses. This will be in addition to SARS-CoV-2. The pilot will be implemented by Ginkgo Bioworks and XpressCheck. Ginkgo Bioworks is an American biotech company, while XpressCheck is a company that monitors incoming international flyers to help detect infectious diseases. Samples that test positive for the said viruses will be sequenced and uploaded to public databases. The data will provide valuable information to public health officials and policymakers. The testing will last for several months. The TGS program began during the COVID-19 pandemic and acted as an early warning system. As of September 2023, TGS has enrolled more than 360,000 air travelers. Participation is voluntary and anonymous. Covered flights are from more than 135 countries from all World Health Organization regions. Rosel Ferreira, Washington, D.C. Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
In Ontario, Canada, registered nurses are given the opportunity to expand their roles, which include being able to prescribe certain medications. Yolanda Aspiras has the story.
Starting next year, registered nurses in Ontario, upon completion of additional requirements, will be able to prescribe medications for certain conditions, such as immunizations, smoking cessation, topical wound care, amongst others. Training programs by the College of Nurses of Ontario will start January 24 of next year. Registered nurses who complete the training program will expand their scope of practice and be able to administer more medications in a variety of settings, such as long-term care and retirement homes. This action aims to provide doctors and nurse practitioners more time to treat patients with more complex issues. Minister of Health Sylvia Jones says that this will also bring healthcare and medications closer to patients, further reducing wait times at hospitals and community clinics. Since January of this year, pharmacists have been able to prescribe for common ailments such as cold sores, pink eye, and urinary tract infections. Last year, over 15,000 new nurses have registered to work in Ontario, about 5,100 of which are internationally educated, with 30,000 current nursing students in the province. Yolanda Aspiras, Toronto, Ontario, Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
Extraordinary stories from ThomasILikness today, from stress relief dogs in Berlin airport, to a tire artist in Cambodia, to a rare Echidna sighting in Indonesia. All these and more on Correspondent at Large.
And now news and commentary from around the globe. When you think of Sweden, gang violence generally doesn't come to mind. But police there are dealing with bombings and shootings almost on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis. Gangs are fighting over drugs and weapons, and increasingly, the foot soldiers in all of this criminal activity and violence are young people. Teenagers from disadvantaged immigrant neighborhoods are being recruited to do the dirty work. Former police officer and now criminology professor Amir Rostami wonders whether what he sees happening in Sweden will be a hint of what will happen in other countries.
If it's happening in Sweden, despite being a strong welfare state with strong political institutions, a high social capital, more or less it could occur in any country.
Just this past September, 12 people died in gang violence, making it the country's deadliest month in the past 4 years. Dogs with jobs. At Berlin's delayed and over-budgeted airport, a trio of canines has been hired to calm weary passengers. Benny, Emmy, and Pepper form this paw patrol. Along with 2 handlers, these good-natured pooches act as stress relief ambassadors. It's a pilot program at the airport that's been plagued with problems since opening 3 years ago. Passengers endure long lineups for check-ins and big delays to retrieve their luggage. The dogs keep fidgety children entertained, calm nervous air travelers, and engage seniors. A lot of travelers say the presence of a dog just calms them right down. And the dogs only approach people who are receptive. Well, here's a guy who takes recycling seriously. Cambodian artist Mean Thip has turned old tires into a giant King Kong. The 37-year-old artist has been turning tires into sculptures for about 4 years now. His latest creation has been this 2.5 meter King Kong. With the help of 2 others, it took about 5 weeks to finish the statue. He used 500 tires from bicycles and motorcycles. Tithfeep has done 40 such statues for clients, and as well as King Kong, he's made elephants, lions, cobras, and a mythical man-bird creature. But does he make any money at this? Well, a King Kong statue goes for between $2,000 and $3,000, so I guess he's doing okay. Tithfeep says he wants to encourage others to reuse materials in their work to reduce waste. Along the same lines, the French government is encouraging people to repair their clothes to cut waste. Now, people will be able to claim €7 for shoe repairs and 10 to 25 euros for mending clothing under a new government scheme. You know, growing up, I remember this is how we lived. You mended ripped clothing. Shoe repair shops fixed your footwear so it would last for several years. You just didn't throw things out because, well, in those days you couldn't afford to replace it. The French government says the textile industry is one of the most polluting industries on the planet. Consider this. Last year, just in France alone, more than 3 billion pieces of clothing were sold. How much of that ended up being thrown out when it could have been repaired? And some good news on the conservation front. It's been more than 60 years, 6 decades, since anyone has seen one of these. It's a rare, elusive Attenborough Echidna. This egg-laying, long-beaked mammal had been believed to be extinct. Here's what it looks like. A rare sight. You know, it hasn't been seen since 1961. Now, this sighting occurred in Indonesia, in a remote part of the country, in the Cyclops Mountains. These critters are nocturnal and very shy. A team of scientists from Britain and Indonesia set up about 80 cameras to try and spot one of these creatures. And after 4 weeks, the effort paid off. And I'll be back in 7 days, but in the meantime, I wish you all peace, joy, and happiness in the ensuing week. ThomasILikness, Correspondent at Large, Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
In Papua New Guinea, small to medium businesses are thriving as the country looks to reach the global market. Eco Hortaleza Quinola has that story on Oceania at a Glance.
The small medium enterprise, or SME, in Papua New Guinea is on the rise. With the recently concluded World Indigenous Business Forum, global connections were established.
It's a tremendous opportunity for folks to share different kinds of experiences and look for ways to kind of partner on things. Indigenous world is worth a lot of money. We need to start to figure out ways where we can capture more of our economy.
Papua New Guinea products and tourism promise strong potential for growth and recognition.
We stand to attract more tourists into our country. When you want your country to grow, tourism is a big economic sector.
The government commits to make platforms available to SMEs, giving them the chance to evolve and thrive both in the local and global markets.
We needed the exposure, and we got that. We built business relationships. We were able to forge partnerships and then meet potential clients and customers. So it was a success for us.
Our coffee is from the highlands of Koilala. We're already overseas as well. IGP is also in Dubai. So our daughter is there. There's 3 of them. 2 are here who look after the Port Moresby branch and 1 looks after the Dubai branch.
From Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, Eko Hortaleza Quinola, Eagle News, we live in extraordinary times.
With holiday travel just around the corner, drivers are reminded to wear seatbelts, stay sober, and eliminate distractions behind the wheel. In Pennsylvania, authorities are gearing up for the busiest travel days of the year. Myla Simbulan on Community Care.
Operation Safe Holiday kicks off today with a Click It or Ticket Thanksgiving enforcement mobilization. The operation, which will run through November 26, aims to keep Pennsylvania's youngest travelers safe on the road. The Pennsylvania State Police will hold child safety seat fitting clinics at several locations across the state. Throughout Operation Safe Holiday, law enforcement will also conduct sobriety checkpoints, roving and regular traffic safety patrols. This will begin the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, November 22nd, through the New Year's holiday. It is one of the state's ways to crack down on drivers impaired by drugs or alcohol. The Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission estimates about 3.3 million motorists to be traveling during the 6-day holiday period. Tuesday and Wednesday look to be the heaviest travel days. The National Safety Council says over 500 traffic fatalities occurred in the country during the 2020 Thanksgiving holiday period. Myla Simbulan, Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, Eagle News, will live in extraordinary times.
And before we let you go, here is our photo of the week. This is a portion of Zion National Park in Utah. The National Park Service describes these red and white sandstone cliffs as towering hundreds of feet above the Virgin River, which runs through a network of narrow canyons. Thank you, Liam James Talents, for this breathtaking view. Thank you all for joining us again. If there are stories or topics you want us to share with you, just comment below. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and X at Eagle News Live. I am Rose Papa Angeles. We'll live in extraordinary times. Stay happy and healthy, everyone.